Hello and welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from Taiwan. I'm Reece Ayers. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has been in office for just over 6 months. His presidency has already faced several domestic challenges amid rising regional tensions. Most recently, in December, China's military mobilized the largest naval fleet in 3 decades to surround Taiwan, following Lai's visit to the Pacific Islands with stopovers in Hawaii and Guam. To discuss the past, present and future of Lai's presidency, I'm joined today by Lii Wen, a spokesperson for the presidential office here in Taipei. Thanks for joining us, Lii Wen.
Hi, Reece. Thanks for having me.
Let's first zoom in on Taiwan domestically. It's been a challenging start for President Lai Ching-te. At the beginning of his term in May, he went into an opposition-led legislature. They were passing controversial bills that brought thousands out to the streets of Taipei in protest. And more recently, we've seen more controversies over the amendments to the recall law. So what have the past 6 months been like for President Lai, and how is he handling these challenges?
Well, the president has certainly addressed several important issues throughout his first 6 months in office. For example, the presidential office set up 3 special committees on important issues that the president personally devotes a lot of his attention to. These include the Committee on Climate Change, the Committee on Promoting a Healthy Taiwan, as well as a newly formed Committee on Whole of Society Defense Resilience. And these issues are an opportunity for the presidential office to communicate with the public and to set the agenda on issues of lasting importance for both domestically and internationally. On the domestic side, President Lai fended off challenges from Taiwan's legislature on controversial bills on expanding the powers given to the legislature, and the president requested for a constitutional interpretation in which the grand justices in the Constitutional Court declared many of these controversial bills as unconstitutional. On the international side, President Lai just returned in early December from a fruitful and productive trip to Taiwan's diplomatic allies in the Pacific, including the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu and Palau, along with transit stops in Hawaii and Guam.
So it was his first international trip as president. Why is it important for Taiwan's presidents to make these kinds of trips? And what was the significance of his stopovers?
Well, President Lai's recent trip to our diplomatic allies in the Pacific and his stopovers in Hawaii and Guam were very positively received from both our international partners and domestically as well. The state visit attained several important goals, including 1, deepening our ties with our diplomatic allies. The visit was an opportunity to showcase Taiwan's contributions to international development, especially those that utilize Taiwan's technological expertise. For example, in the Marshall Islands, President Lai visited a hospital which utilizes Taiwanese AI and telemedicine technology, and the hospital has a long-term cooperation project with medical staff from Taiwan. And in Tuvalu, President Lai reaffirmed support for a new submarine cables project, which is jointly carried out by Taiwan and the U.S., Australia, Japan, our democratic partners in the region. On the question of the significance of the president's stopovers in Hawaii and Guam, and this brings us to the second goal of the trip, which is to enhance global voices that support Taiwan. The president interacted with political leaders on both the congressional and the local levels. President Lai also engaged in phone conversations with many important political leaders in the U.S. from both the Republican and Democratic parties. So I think this shows bipartisan support from the U.S. to increase engagement with Taiwan, and it's always been Taiwan's priority to ensure that support for Taiwan remains an issue of unity in the U.S. instead of an issue of political contention.
We'll come back to the U.S. a bit later. Just a bit more on China's response to Lai's most recent trip. China's presence in the region around that time was undeniable. Are these kinds of trips worth the risk for Taiwan?
So China's recent large-scale military deployments and their military activities in the entire region are blatant disruptions to security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. President Lai's routine overseas visits and friendly interactions with our diplomatic allies are no excuse or should not become a pretext for China to engage in military provocations. After all, Taiwan has the right to engage with our global partners, and Taiwan has the right to make global contributions to the international community. One aspect to note is that China's recent military maneuvers are on extremely large scale and scope in the region. They not only target waters surrounding Taiwan, but also extend towards waters around the entire First Island chain, including waters near the Philippines and Japan, and even with naval deployments between the First Island chain and Second Island chains. So China might not call its exercise an exercise, but its actions already disrupt global peace. When we look at Putin's actions in the war in Ukraine, Putin also refrained from calling his invasion of Ukraine a war. So I think actions are more important than words. We urge China to uphold its regional responsibilities and engage in peaceful interactions with Taiwan.
It's not the first big military action we've seen around Taiwan. Is this the new normal now during Lai's presidency?
The president has repeatedly stated Taiwan's willingness to engage in dialogue and exchanges with China on the condition of parity and dignity. And Taiwan is more than willing to engage in exchanges that are healthy and orderly between the two sides of the strait. That being said, Taiwan cannot engage in dialogue with China while military provocations are simultaneously taking place. Taiwan cannot engage in exchanges with China if there are gray zone coercions taking place at the same time. If a person wants to start a conversation with you and that person has a weapon in their hand, then the conversation might not begin smoothly.
Let's zoom out now. We've had a good look at his first 6 months in office. Now let's look ahead to the future of Taiwan and China. Taipei has just hosted the Twin Cities Forum with officials from Shanghai coming over. That facilitates kind of local level dialogue between Taipei and Shanghai specifically. But what's the Lai administration doing at the national level to safeguard Taiwan, not just militarily, also by engaging more with China diplomatically?
The president has always adhered to his 4 pillars of peace action plan, which includes a comprehensive approach on maintaining peace and stability in the region. We hope to convey the message to the world that Taiwan is a force for peace and stability, and Taiwan intends to adamantly maintain the status quo, and we refrain from engaging in provocations, but we will not bow down to pressure. Taiwan has not given up on any opportunities to engage in increased exchanges and dialogue with the Chinese side, including the fact that Taiwan is very open to welcoming Chinese tourists, and Taiwan is open to welcoming Chinese students studying in Taiwan for degrees instead of only on a short-term exchange basis. However, the Chinese side has not given the green light to pursue these further avenues of exchange.
Let's move on from China. Let's talk more about Taiwan-U.S. relations that have been, growing over the years. Are there any concerns about how that relationship might change, given Trump's comments about Taiwan? He's mentioned Taiwan stealing the U.S.'s chip industry. He's also said that Taiwan needs to pay more for its defense to the U.S.
Well, we remain confident about the strength of Taiwan-U.S. relations, which has been built upon decades of friendly interactions between Taiwan and the U.S. And the most important component is that Taiwan receives bipartisan support from the U.S. We are quite confident about deepening various ties and various aspects of cooperation between Taiwan and the U.S., including on our security, including economic ties. In the year 2010, around 80% of Taiwan's outbound investments went to China. But when you look at the statistics for 2023, only 11% of Taiwan's outbound investments went to China, whereas over 40% of Taiwan's outbound investments went to the US. So when you look at the U.S. Taiwan partnership, it's not just a partnership based on common values and ideals. It's actually a partnership based on common interests and common economic benefits for both countries. When we look at the incoming Trump administration, I think we see very positive messages so far when we look at the cabinet nominations in the incoming Trump team. For example, in the areas of national security, we see many friendly voices that have supported Taiwan publicly over the years. If the saying that personnel is policy is true, then I think policy towards Taiwan are on a terrific start.
Even if that means, Taiwan potentially kind of being forced to pay more to the US for defense.
So when it comes to security, the rule is really simple. We must help ourselves before others can help us. Taiwan must bear the most responsibility for its own security. And Taiwan does not take any foreign military assistance for granted. However, if other countries decide to help us and engage in issues of defense cooperation, then Taiwan will also proactively seek opportunities to strengthen our defense through joint efforts with other countries. When you compare Taiwan's defense budget from 2016 to the year 2024, Taiwan's defense budget has already made an 80% increase. This shows our determination to protect ourselves and to strengthen our defense and resilience. We are a democracy, so all our defense budget needs to be passed by our parliament through careful deliberations. However, we think that there is the will and the public support to continue to increase our defense budget consecutively year by year.
Taiwan has 12 remaining official diplomatic allies, but they have a history, these allies, of being kind of coaxed away by China. What's Lai's strategy to maintaining those remaining allies? What does Taiwan really get out of those relationships?
Taiwan has been isolated and bullied and repressed by China in international events for such a long time. And it's usually the case in which our diplomatic allies voice support for Taiwan and followed by other democracies, such as the US and European countries or Japan and other Asian democracies. So the diplomatic allies play an extremely important role for Taiwan, and this administration intends to continue the international development projects that can create a lasting positive impact for our diplomatic allies and even for the world. This is also in stark contrast with the Chinese approach to poaching our diplomatic allies, which we've seen publicly documented cases in which China engaged in personal briberies of corrupt officials and local politicians, or manipulative tactics used on the local politicians in various countries. And we believe that Taiwan's methods for international development can truly take care of the well-being of the region.
Finally, I guess in one sentence, where does President Lai see Taiwan being in 3.5 years at the end of his first term?
Taiwan will become more prosperous, more secure, and Taiwan will continue to build trust with our international friends and partners.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your insights into Lai's past, present, and future as the President of Taiwan.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. For more from TaiwanPlus, you can follow us on social media. But for now, goodbye and see you next time.